It was supposed to be just a fun, easy road trip. You know, the kind where you and a few friends pile into a car, leave the city behind, and spend a weekend out in nature, with no real plans other than to enjoy each other's company. We didn't even know where we were going at first. Just the open road ahead of us, a vague idea that we'd find some cabin off the beaten path. No phone signals, no distractions, just us and the wilderness. Sounds like a dream, right? The morning was perfect. We were cruising down quiet back roads, the kind of roads you only find when you really try to get away from everything. The sun was high, the air smelled fresh, and we were all in good spirits. We didn't need much, just the radio and our voices filling the car as we sang along to whatever came on, completely ignoring how bad the fast food we'd eaten earlier probably was for us. At first, it was just peaceful. We passed small towns that seemed to be stuck in another time. The trees along the road were massive, ancient-looking, as if they'd been standing there long before any of us had been born. Everything felt open, free, and wild. But soon, that wide openness started to feel different. Quieter. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like something's missing, like the whole forest is holding its breath. By the time the road started twisting and turning in ways we hadn't expected, the atmosphere had completely changed. The trees got thicker, the landscape more isolated. We'd been driving for hours and there hadn't been a single other car in sight. That's when it started to hit us. This place wasn't like anywhere we'd ever been. The unease wasn't just in my gut anymore. It had crept into my chest, like a slow tightening. Maybe we should turn around, Sarah muttered from the back seat, her voice barely above a whisper. She was staring out the window and I could see her eyes darting around, searching. Nah, we're almost there, Tom said, not even looking up from the map. Just a couple more miles. But those couple of miles turned into hours. Every turn we took felt like we were going deeper into nowhere, with no sign of the cabin we'd been promised. We finally pulled off the road and parked by a clearing, hoping to stretch our legs and figure out where we went wrong. That's when things started to get weird. The trees around us were dark, almost too dark, and their branches twisted in ways that made the whole scene feel wrong. A mist had begun to roll in, thick and swirling, like it wasn't natural. The air had this weight to it, like the whole place was holding a secret. And still, no cabin. We should have turned around earlier, I said under my breath. I wasn't sure if I meant it for everyone else or just to myself, but it was clear we were all feeling the same thing now. And then it happened. Crack. The sound of something breaking, like a twig snapping underfoot. We froze. No animal made a sound like that, not with that kind of purpose behind it. It was footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps coming from somewhere in the woods. Did you hear that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Everyone nodded, but no one said a word. We all got out of the car slowly, standing in a line, trying to see through the trees. The air was still, too still. It felt like the world was waiting for something. That's when I saw him. A man, tall, thin, and standing just at the edge of the clearing, his face hidden under the brim of a weathered hat. He wasn't moving, just watching us. Tom cleared his throat and called out, "Can I help you?" The man didn't answer. He just stared. His eyes, if you could even call them eyes, looked empty, like they'd seen things that drained all the life out of him. His clothes were old, filthy, like he hadn't cared for them in years. "Get in the car," Sarah whispered, her voice shaky. I didn't need any more prompting. We all scrambled back into the car, slamming the doors shut as quickly as we could. The man didn't move. He just stood there, like he was waiting for something. But we weren't sticking around to find out what. "Go," Tom said, his voice tight as he put the car in reverse and floored it. We drove for what felt like hours, but no matter how fast we went, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still there, right behind us, watching. The sun was setting, and the road had started to twist and turn in ways that didn't make sense anymore. There were no signs, no familiar landmarks, just a darkening stretch of pavement that felt like we were going in circles. "Where the hell are we?" Sarah's voice cracked as she stared out the window. "I don't know," Tom said, his eyes wide, constantly glancing in the rear view. "But we need to stop." We pulled over again, but this time nobody got out. We sat in the car, too tense to even breathe. That's when we heard it, the sound of tapping on the windows. Soft at first, like a twig tapping against glass, but it grew louder, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. We all looked at each other, our eyes wide. No one moved, no one spoke, but the tapping kept going, faster now, like someone was trying to get in. "We have to go," I whispered, my heart pounding. Tom started the engine, and we shot forward again, the car lurching down the road, but the tapping didn't stop. It was as if it was coming from inside the car now. And then, through the trees, I saw it. A cabin. Old, falling apart, sitting in the middle of the road like it had been waiting for us. The lights were on, which only made it worse. It didn't make sense, but we were drawn to it. Something in me screamed to turn back, but we were already too close. Just as we pulled up to the cabin, the car stalled. The engine cut out. We were stuck. "Are you kidding me?" Tom slammed his hands on the steering wheel, but the car wouldn't start. "Go to the cabin," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Maybe there's someone there." Reluctantly, we got out of the car. The silence around us was deafening. The tapping had stopped, replaced by this low humming sound, like the trees themselves were alive. We walked toward the cabin, our footsteps sounding too loud in the thick stillness. The door creaked open by itself. No one was inside, but the hum was louder now, vibrating in my chest. "Hello?" Tom called, stepping inside first. His voice echoed. The cabin was dark and musty, like it hadn't been lived in for years. But that hum, it was getting to me. Then I saw it, a figure. It was tall, twisted, almost inhuman. Its limbs were wrong, stretching in ways that made no sense. Its face was smooth, featureless, nothing but a blank, eerie surface. Before I could react, it spoke, its voice hollow and cold. "You shouldn't have come here." We ran for the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening bang. The figure's limbs snapped, jerking unnaturally as it advanced toward us. The next thing I remember was waking up in the morning, a police officer shaking my shoulder. Our car was still parked on the side of the road, doors wide open, but there was no sign of us, no evidence of what had happened, just that old, decaying cabin, sitting there like it had always been there. No matter how far I run, I know I'll never forget the sound of that tapping. It's like it's still with me, echoing in the back of my mind, reminding me that there are some places you shouldn't wander into, some roads you shouldn't take. I've always been one of those people who loves the idea of a spontaneous road trip, the kind where you throw a bag in the back seat, hop in the car, and just see where the road takes you. So when my friends and I decided to head out to the mountains for the weekend, I was all in. No plan, no destination in mind, just the open road and a promise of a quick getaway. It sounded perfect. The first few hours were exactly what we'd hoped for. The music was blasting, the conversation was flowing, and the sun was setting, casting that perfect golden glow over everything. We were cruising through small towns, laughing and joking as we went. It felt like one of those moments when everything is just easy, you know, the kind of carefree vibe that makes you forget about everything else. But, as it always happens, things started to get a little weird once we strayed off the main road. Our trusty GPS suggested a shortcut, winding through a narrow mountain road. "It'll be faster," the app said, so we decided to go for it. At first, it was fine, the kind of road you expect in the mountains, trees everywhere, the occasional deer darting across, the usual stuff. But the further we went, the more the vibe started to change. The road started to feel off. The trees were closing in around us, casting long shadows that made everything feel darker, even though it was still early evening. And the signs for nearby towns started getting fewer and farther apart. It felt like we were disappearing into nowhere, and honestly, it made me a little uncomfortable. And then we saw it. A car parked on the side of the road, its engine still running, headlights shining brightly. But there was no one around. No driver, no passengers, nothing. We slowed down, looking around, but the road was completely empty, not a sound. It was like the car had just materialized out of nowhere. We didn't stop, though. Something about it felt wrong, and the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. We just kept driving. The road got narrower and narrower, and the trees seemed to close in even tighter. The air got heavier, and I could feel the shift in the mood. The easy laughter from before was replaced by awkward silence. We started joking about how we were probably heading into some kind of horror movie scenario, but deep down, I think we all knew it wasn't just a joke anymore. Something wasn't right. And then, without warning, the car stalled. At first, it was no big deal, just a little sputter and a stop. We tried starting it again, but nothing. That's when the dread really started creeping in. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but I swear I heard something rustling in the trees. I looked at my friends, but they looked just as confused and uneasy as I felt. We decided to get out and check the engine, hoping it was just a mechanical glitch. But when we stepped out of the car, that's when we saw him, a man standing about 50 yards down the road, right beyond the tree line. He was dressed in ragged clothes, the kind of clothes you don't see much anymore, old and torn. He didn't move, didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring at us. His eyes were wide, almost too wide, like he hadn't blinked in ages. His mouth was slightly open, like he was waiting for something. We called out to him, nothing. We tried again, louder this time, but there was still no response. And after a few moments that felt like hours, he just turned around and disappeared into the woods. My heart was racing, and we all stood there, staring at the spot where he had been, too stunned to say anything. Maybe he's just lost, one of my friends suggested. But it didn't help. We all knew something was off. We got back in the car and locked the doors, trying the engine again. Still nothing. That's when the panic really started setting in. We were stuck. No cell service, no other cars, no idea where we were, and the woods were just wrong. Too quiet, too still. It felt like the kind of place where you shouldn't be alone at night. And then, just as we were about to start debating whether or not to try walking for help, the knocking started. At first it was soft, like a tap on the window. We all froze, exchanging confused looks. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. This time louder. It sounded like it was coming from outside the car, so we slowly turned our heads toward the driver's side window. Nothing, but the knocking didn't stop. It moved to the back window, then to the passenger side, tapping in a slow, deliberate rhythm, like someone knew exactly where we were, knew we couldn't get away. My heart was in my throat, and I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. We didn't dare look outside again. We just sat there, frozen, listening as the tapping grew more frantic. And then, in the midst of it all, we heard a voice. Low. Almost a whisper. Let me in. It wasn't any of us. It was a man's voice. But it wasn't the kind of voice you hear when someone's asking for help. It sounded wrong, like a warning. At that point, none of us could take it anymore. One of my friends finally found the nerve to start the car again. This time, the engine turned over. Without a second thought, we peeled out of there, not once looking back. We didn't stop until we hit a small town hours later. It wasn't until we pulled into a gas station that we could finally breathe again. But when we got out of the car, one of my friends spotted something in the back seat, a small, blood-stained piece of cloth. It didn't belong to any of us. We hadn't seen it before, and, well, let's just say none of us were keen to stick around to figure out where it came from. We found a motel and got out of there first thing the next morning. To this day, I still don't know what happened that night or who that man was. But I do know one thing for sure. There's a road out there, tucked away in the mountains, that you should never drive down. And I have no intention of ever finding out what's waiting for you in those woods. I still remember that detour, and honestly, I never should have taken it. It wasn't that the map was wrong. It wasn't. And it wasn't like anything felt sketchy at first. It was just this gut feeling that hit me out of nowhere. You know the type. The kind of instinct you can't really explain, but you just know it's there. Like when you stop at a rest area and it's too quiet. Not even a bird chirping, not a breeze, just nothing. That's the feeling I got when we turned off Route 17 and onto Highway 41. We'd been on the road for what felt like forever. 8 hours in, and 30 minutes of saved time seemed like a gift from the gods. Mark was behind the wheel, and if you know him, you know he's the type who trusts GPS like it's a religious text. Me, I was half asleep in the passenger seat, legs up on the dashboard, watching the trees blur past like a green river. The road started getting narrow real fast. No more clear lanes, just cracked pavement with weeds popping up between the cracks. The trees above us stretched out, their branches hanging like they were trying to close us off from the world. No signs, no mile markers, just that sinking feeling, like we'd driven straight into nowhere. About 10 minutes in, we saw it, an old rusted-out station wagon pulled off to the side, hood up, the kind of car you don't expect to see out there. Mark slowed the car down, glancing over at me like, should we stop? I shook my head so fast I think my brain almost rattled loose. Nope, no way, keep going. But as we passed, I couldn't help it. I looked over, and there was someone sitting in the driver's seat, just sitting there, head tilted forward, like they were either asleep or pretending to be. I didn't say anything. I don't know why. Maybe I just didn't want to hear whatever Mark would say in response. A few minutes later, the signal dropped. No bars, no Wi-Fi. The GPS app froze mid-turn, stuck on a map that hadn't fully loaded. That's when it hit us. We hadn't passed another car. No driveways, no mailboxes. Just endless trees and a road that looked like it hadn't been fixed since the 60s. Mark laughed, one of those nervous, forced laughs that didn't fool anyone. "We're fine," he said. "Probably just a dead zone." Then we saw the signs. Wooden boards nailed to the trees, hand-painted letters. At first I thought they were just old mile markers or random directions, but no, they were something else entirely. They read things like, "No turning back, keep driving, don't stop for anyone." Neither of us said a word after that, not even a joke. Mark's hands were tight on the wheel, and I was wide awake now, my heart beating faster. The trees grew thicker. Their branches scraped the roof of the car like fingers dragging across metal. The light started to change, but it wasn't sunset. It was just darker, like someone had turned down the brightness on the world. Then we hit something. It wasn't a big bump, more like a sharp jolt. Mark swore under his breath and pulled over instinctively. We got out to check the tire, right front. It was shredded, looked like someone had slashed it. No tools, no spare, no signal. That's when we heard it, a rustling. Then a low creak, like something hanging on an old rope, swinging back and forth. We turned around, and then we saw it. The station wagon again, this time with the driver's side door wide open. No one was inside, but something was different. It felt off. "Get in the car," I said, not even looking at Mark. I didn't want to know what he was thinking. I just got in and slammed the door. He followed without saying a word. We sat there, not moving. Doors locked, lights off. Nothing but the sound of our breathing. Another creak. This time, closer. Then a knock. One knock on the rear window. Clear as day. Deliberate. Like it knew we were pretending it wasn't real. Mark turned to look. I didn't. I couldn't. He froze, his eyes wide in the mirror. I whispered, "What is it?" He didn't answer, just shook his head. "It's not right." We stayed like that for what felt like hours, or maybe it was only minutes. Hard to tell when time just seems to stop. Then, headlights appeared behind us, bright, blinding high beams, but no engine sound, just the light. The knocking stopped, the creaking stopped, and suddenly, it was silent again. Mark started the car. I have no idea how, considering the flat tire, but somehow it worked. We didn't care about the rim or the smell of burning rubber. We just hit the gas and drove like we were being chased. We didn't stop until the trees finally thinned out, and we spilled back onto Route 17 like we were being spat out from a nightmare. The rest of the drive? We didn't say a word. When we finally found a gas station, Mark got out and threw up behind the building. I just sat on the curb, hands shaking. I checked Google Maps again. Highway 41 wasn't on there, no matter how far I zoomed in. Now, we didn't tell anyone. Who would believe it, right? Haunted road sounds like something out of a campfire story. But I sleep with my phone under my pillow now, and I always make sure the tank's full, because I don't know where that road leads if you keep going, and I'm not about to find out. Some shortcuts just aren't worth it. It started off just like any other road trip, you know? Me and my old car, one of those beat-up sedans that's seen better days, driving down some quiet stretch of highway on a Saturday afternoon. The kind of day that feels perfect for a solo drive. The sun was setting, casting everything in that golden purple glow, and I was just looking forward to some peace and quiet, a break from the chaos of everyday life. My destination? A small town I'd never heard of. Just somewhere I could escape to for a little while and clear my head. I'd been driving for hours, passing empty fields and those lonely old gas stations that make you wonder if anyone ever stops there anymore. Then I saw the sign, next rest stop 50 miles. At first, I was glad. My legs were cramping up and I was starting to get hungry. But as the miles stretched on and the road got more and more desolate, something about it started to feel a little off. It wasn't like any other rest stop I'd seen. No fast food, no big parking lot, just a single weathered sign and a dirt road leading off to the side. But hey, better than nothing, right? So I took the turn. The road was rough, bumps and jolts all over the place. Trees crowded in on both sides, blocking out most of the last bit of daylight. All I had for company was the sound of my tires crunching against the gravel. After what felt like forever, the trees finally thinned out, and I came across this small, rundown building with a gas pump in front of it. There was not a single car around. It looked like it hadn't seen a customer in years. Windows boarded up, and an eerie kind of silence hanging in the air like it was stuck in time. I figured I'd stretch my legs and maybe grab a snack from the vending machine sitting under a flickering light by the door. The machine was half empty, just a few dusty bags of chips and some sodas. I picked out a soda, sat down on the cracked concrete steps and stared out at the fading sky. That's when I heard it, a car engine. Very faint, but definitely there. I looked up, expecting to see someone pulling in, but the road was still completely empty. I brushed it off, telling myself it was probably the wind or my tired mind playing tricks on me. That's when I saw him. He was standing just beyond the gas station, mostly hidden by the trees. I couldn't make out his face, but he was tall and thin, just a dark figure against the dimming light. At first, I thought maybe he was another traveler, someone else stopping for a break. But he wasn't moving. He was just standing there, staring in my direction. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just as lost as I was. But the longer I sat there, the more uneasy I felt. I finished my soda quickly, then hopped back into my car and locked the doors behind me. As I started to pull out, I glanced in my rearview mirror. He was still there, watching. I wasn't about to hang around to figure out what that was about. I hit the gas and sped off, hoping I'd put the whole thing behind me. But the feeling of being watched, it didn't go away. Every few minutes, I kept glancing nervously at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights behind me. About 30 miles down the road, I decided to stop for gas. This place was another one of those lonely stations, but at least it felt a little more alive. There were a couple of cars in the lot, and the attendant waved at me as I pulled up. I filled my tank, still trying to shake that weird feeling in my stomach. That's when I heard the tapping. It started as this faint sound, like something soft hitting the roof of my car. I looked up confused, but saw nothing. Figured it was probably just a bird or maybe branches from the trees overhead. But then the tapping got louder, more persistent. It started to sound like nails dragging across metal. I looked around again, and that's when I saw him, the man from the rest stop. He was standing in the parking lot right at the edge of the light, and this time I could see his face. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, and fixed directly on me. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. My heart slammed against my chest. I hurried to finish fueling, slammed the gas cap shut, and jumped back into the car. I tried not to look at him as I started the engine, but of course, I couldn't help it. That's when I saw him move. Slowly, casually, like he had all the time in the world, he started walking toward my car. Without thinking, I hit the gas. Tires screeched as I tore out of the parking lot. The road was still empty, completely empty. I kept glancing behind me, but there was nothing. For the next 20 miles, I thought maybe I'd shaken him off. But that feeling, it stayed. Like he was still out there, watching. Then, there it was, the headlights. I spotted them in my rearview mirror, his car. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me. The car kept a perfect distance behind me, no matter how fast or slow I drove. I tried to lose him by taking random turns, but those headlights stayed with me, like they knew exactly where I was going. I ended up on a smaller road, barely wide enough for 2 cars. My plan? To keep going until I found a town, or at least some kind of light. But the road kept stretching on, darker and emptier with every mile. I felt more and more trapped, my heart thudding faster with every twist and turn. And then, the headlights disappeared. One moment they were there, and the next gone. I slowed down, thinking maybe I'd lost him, but when I looked around, I realized something worse. The road was different now. The trees were thicker, the air colder. The smooth asphalt I'd been driving on was gone, replaced by cracked, uneven pavement that was slowly turning into dirt. I slammed on the brakes, my hands shaking. Something wasn't right. I threw the car in reverse, but the road behind me, it wasn't there anymore. The headlights? They reappeared, now in front of me, bright, unblinking, like they were waiting. And then in the distance, I saw him again, but this time he wasn't alone. There were others, figures, standing like statues along the side of the road. Their eyes were all fixed on me, just like his. I didn't stop to figure out who they were. I spun the wheel and slammed the gas pedal down, speeding away as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I reached the next town. By then, it felt like I'd been driving for days. I don't know who that man was or where he came from, but I do know one thing. I'm never taking a road trip like that again. Never. I never imagined that a road trip could turn into something straight out of a horror movie. Until it did. It started out innocent enough. A few friends and I decided to take a quick weekend trip down the coast. We were all craving that sense of freedom, the kind you get when you're on the open road, away from the chaos of everyday life. Just the thought of driving through new places, stopping at quirky roadside attractions, and diving into greasy diners made everything seem perfect. We packed my old beat-up sedan with snacks, playlists, and plenty of excitement, ready to hit the road. The plan was simple. Just drive, take it slow, maybe check out some weird little spots along the way. We were trying to avoid the highway to make it feel more authentic. The sun was setting behind us, casting this warm, golden glow on everything. But then the vibe started to shift. As we drove deeper into nowhere, the world seemed to get quieter, emptier. The towns we passed through were farther apart, and the roads felt like they went on forever. The lights of civilization were fading behind us, replaced by miles of desolation. It started to feel like we were driving into some forgotten corner of the country, far away from everything we knew. Finally, we pulled into this tiny town around dusk. I hesitate to even call it a town, more like a collection of rundown buildings, a dusty gas station that looked like it hadn't seen business in years, and a few houses scattered in between. It felt deserted. It was eerily quiet, like the kind of place where you'd expect to see tumbleweeds roll by. But there wasn't even that. Just silence. We were tired and hungry, so we decided to stop at the gas station to fill up. Maybe we could find somewhere to eat nearby. That's when things started to feel a little off. As I was filling the car, Rachel wandered over to a little diner next to the station. It was one of those places that just screams, "Don't eat here." But of course, she waved me over like it was the best spot in town. The neon sign flickered like it was about to give up, and the whole place looked greasy, like it had been stuck in time since the 70s. When I walked inside, the bell above the door jingled, and I swear, it was like everything stopped. The whole place was silent, like it was waiting for us. The air smelled like oil and something I couldn't put my finger on. The booths were all worn down and the walls were covered in faded black and white photos of the town, except you couldn't really tell what most of them were anymore. It was the kind of diner that felt abandoned, even though there were a couple of people sitting at the counter. They didn't even look up when we walked in. The waitress behind the counter was this middle-aged woman with way too much makeup on. She gave us this slow, deliberate smile that felt a little too practiced, a little too off. "Sit wherever you'd like," she said in this voice that was smooth, almost too smooth, like she'd been doing it for years and didn't care anymore. Rachel and I picked a booth by the window. The whole place was so quiet it was uncomfortable. I kept glancing around and everything looked washed out, like it had been stuck in some forgotten time. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were the only ones there, even though I could see the other two guys at the counter. They weren't talking, just staring straight ahead. One of them caught my eye for a second too long, studying me like he was trying to figure something out before he turned away without saying a word. The waitress brought us menus, but honestly, I didn't even look at mine. I wasn't hungry anymore. The air was thick with something I couldn't name. Rachel, though, was being her usual optimistic self, asking the waitress about the town, about things to do around there. The woman just smiled, her lips barely stretching, and answered her in short, clipped sentences. She wasn't giving anything away. And then we heard it, a low, rumbling thud. It wasn't the kind of noise you'd expect from a truck or car. It was followed by a slow, screeching sound, like metal scraping on metal. My heart skipped a beat. I looked at Rachel, but she didn't seem to notice. The waitress didn't react at all, but the two men at the counter stiffened for just a second. Their eyes flicked to the window, and that's when the waitress casually said, "That's the old mill, been abandoned for years." I didn't believe her for a second. There was something in the way she said it, too casual, like she was trying to brush it off, but I could tell it was a lie. Rachel was still chatting away, but I could tell she was starting to feel it too, the same weirdness that was crawling under my skin, the kind of feeling that makes your neck tingle, like something's not right, but you can't figure out what it is. After what felt like an eternity, I paid the bill and we made a hasty exit. When we stepped outside, I realized how much darker it had gotten. The road we had driven in on was even more desolate now, with only the flickering streetlights marking where the road even was. Then I heard it again, that rumble, louder, closer. I whipped around trying to figure out where it was coming from, and that's when I saw it. The truck. It was parked at the far end of the gas station. An old rusted pickup, its engine growling like some kind of animal waking up after a long sleep. The headlights were off, but the truck was idling, casting these long, weird shadows across the cracked pavement. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew there was something wrong with that truck. Without saying anything, I grabbed Rachel's arm and motioned for her to hurry. My heart was pounding in my chest as I fumbled with my keys. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, and that's when I saw them. 3 men. They were standing by the truck, their faces hidden in the shadows. They weren't moving. Just standing there, too still to be normal. One of them started walking toward us, slow and deliberate, his boots echoing in the dead silence. I slammed the car door shut, my hands shaking, and turned the key in the ignition. Rachel was already buckling up, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. I didn't look back as I threw the car in gear and sped off, tires squealing against the cracked pavement. We didn't stop until we hit the next town. We never talked about that night again, but every time I drive through a stretch of empty road, I think about the truck, about those men, and wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed just a little longer. It was supposed to be the perfect road trip. Just me and Ryan, best friends, a packed car, and the open road ahead. We'd been planning it for months, each of us imagining the kind of trip where nothing went wrong. We weren't even aiming for a specific destination, just a few days away from everything. We thought it would be the ideal escape. No schedules, no obligations, just endless highways, good tunes, and a chance to clear our heads. But, as you'll see, things didn't go quite as we had planned. It all started so harmlessly. The first day was all about excitement. Early morning, windows down, the sun shining, and the hum of the engine blending with our laughter. We were a couple of idiots, joking around and singing off-key to our favorite tracks as we cruised through the countryside. It was the kind of day where everything felt simple and right. After hours of driving, we pulled over at this tiny gas station. No big deal, right? But the kind of place that had those flickering fluorescent lights, cracked linoleum floors, and the smell of stale coffee and rubber that made you feel like you'd walked into a time capsule. The whole place had this weird quiet to it, like no one had bothered to fill it with life for years. But nothing that screamed danger either, just a gas station. That's when we met the clerk. She was an older woman, probably in her 50s, with sharp features that looked like they'd seen more than they cared to. Her eyes were unnervingly wide, like she was looking right through us, searching for something. And that smile. Yeah, it was the kind of smile that felt too stiff, too forced. "Where y'all headed?" she asked, her voice loud in the empty store, like she was trying to make sure we heard her over the silence. Ryan tossed a bag of chips onto the counter, shrugging. "Just driving around, no real destination." She didn't blink. Instead, she kept staring, her eyes fixed on us for a beat too long. "Well, you be careful," she said, her voice dropping just a little. "Strange things happen on these roads." I tried to brush it off, laughing a little. "We're just here for a good time, no worries." But her face didn't change. She just nodded, slow and deliberate, as if she was already aware of something we hadn't figured out. "Watch yourselves. It gets weird once the sun goes down." We laughed it off, of course, just some old lady saying spooky stuff to entertain herself. We grabbed our snacks, jumped back in the car, and hit the road again, hoping the weird vibe would fade as we drove on. As the sun started dipping lower, though, that feeling, whatever it was, didn't go away. It actually got worse. The sky turned darker faster than it should have, and the roads just felt emptier. I stole a glance at Ryan, but he was unusually quiet, staring out the window. He was always the loud one, cracking jokes, but now he just looked pale, like the color had drained from his face. "I don't know, man," he muttered, his voice almost a whisper. "Something feels off." I glanced around, but nothing seemed different. The road ahead was the same, straight and empty, stretching into the night with no sign of anything alive. No other cars, no towns, nothing. Just us and this long stretch of dark asphalt. We kept going, hoping it was just our imagination. But the oddness didn't pass. It only got more intense as the night dragged on. The moon was high now, casting these long, stretched-out shadows on the road, and every time we passed a town it felt wrong. There'd be this strange glow in the distance, like the place wasn't quite there, or like something was off about it. We saw a few houses, but the windows were dark, the streets empty, and the whole town felt abandoned, like we'd stepped into a ghost town. Then we saw it, a sign, just barely visible in the glow of our headlights. "Welcome to Ravenwood." And that name, Ravenwood, it didn't sit right with me. It sounded like something out of a bad horror movie. The town wasn't on our map, and the roads leading in were more like trails, overgrown with weeds, like they hadn't been used in years. Ryan slowed down, his hand hovering over the wheel. "What do you think? Should we just keep going?" But before I could even open my mouth, there was someone standing at the side of the road. A man. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there. This tall, thin figure in a dark hoodie, staring at us from the shadows. Ryan slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a stop, and we both just stared at him. The guy didn't budge, didn't even flinch. He was just there, watching us with this unnerving calm. It wasn't like he was threatening, but there was something so wrong about him. Something about the way he stood still, so unnatural. "Maybe we should just drive through," I said, my throat dry, barely able to speak. Ryan didn't wait for me to finish. He threw the car into gear and we sped through the town, not daring to look back. Ravenwood was dead quiet, no people, no lights, nothing. A few old rusty cars sat at weird angles on the side of the road, like they'd been abandoned in a hurry. I swear, I felt like we were driving through a place frozen in time. As we passed through the center of town, something caught my eye. I glanced to the side and saw it. Shadows moving behind the dark windows. Figures standing there, still, just watching. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to look again. But it felt like we were surrounded. We didn't stop again until we were miles away from Ravenwood. But it didn't feel like we'd escaped. It felt like we were being watched from the moment we left. Even when we stopped for gas at the next station, it was different. The attendant barely looked up, his eyes darting around like he knew something we didn't. And then, just as we were about to leave, he said something that made my stomach drop. "You boys come through Ravenwood, didn't you?" Ryan and I locked eyes, both of us frozen for a second. "How did you—" He didn't answer, just smiled this small, knowing smile like he was in on some secret we hadn't even begun to understand. He handed us our change without another word and we left, fast. We didn't talk about it, either of us. Not until we reached the next town, where we finally felt like we could breathe again. But the thing is, we both knew. We never planned another road trip like that. Some roads are better left untraveled, some mysteries left unsolved. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. Sarah, my best friend, and I had been talking about this road trip for what felt like forever. We mapped out our route, packed up my old car with snacks and good vibes, and set off with no real destination. The whole point was just to drive, to see where the road took us, and to soak up the freedom of endless highways. We drove through state after state, singing to our favorite songs, laughing at dumb jokes, and stopping at weird roadside attractions. Honestly, it felt like we were doing it right for the first time in forever. That is, until it didn't feel right anymore. It started off harmless enough. We were driving down this empty stretch of highway late one night, a few hours after sunset. The sky had turned this deep shade of indigo, the stars slowly starting to peek through the gaps in the clouds. We were pretty far out, no other cars, just miles of open road and the occasional dim light from distant farmhouses. The air was heavy with quiet, the kind that sits on your chest and makes you feel like something's waiting for something. We had just passed a tiny town when Sarah mentioned pulling over at a gas station up ahead to stretch our legs and maybe grab a snack. But when we pulled in, the lot was empty. Not a single other car in sight. The lights above the pumps flickered on and off like they were giving up on life, casting this sickly glow over everything. It was off, but Sarah didn't seem to notice. She hopped out of the car, stretching her legs like it was just another stop on our fun little adventure, while I stayed in the car scrolling through my phone, trying to shake off the weird feeling. The gas station attendant was this older guy, scruffy as hell, with a beard that almost covered his entire face. He didn't even look up when we walked in. The inside was dim, with dusty shelves that barely held anything, some cans of beans, bags of chips, and whatever random junk food the station had left. My stomach churned. I felt like I was being watched, but I told myself I was just being paranoid. "Where you girls headed?" The guy's voice was raspy, like he hadn't used it much in years, and he looked up from his counter without really focusing on us. "Oh, just driving through," Sarah said with a smile, totally oblivious. "It's a road trip." He just nodded slowly. His eyes didn't leave us, though. "Ain't much out there after you leave here. Best keep moving." I tried to laugh it off, keeping it light. "We're not worried. GPS will keep us on track." But he didn't respond. He just stared at us like he was measuring us up, then mumbled something about watching the road before going back to his counter. It was strange, but whatever. We figured it was just some weird old guy and didn't think much of it. But Sarah was already looking uncomfortable. I could see it in her eyes. She was getting the same vibe. We hurried back to the car and I started the engine. The road ahead was dark, too dark, and something about it felt off now. Sarah kept glancing in the rearview mirror, like she was expecting someone to be behind us. I didn't say anything at first, but it was bugging me too. Finally, she broke the silence. "That guy there was something off about him, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, I noticed it too. It was like he wasn't looking at us, he was looking through us." Sarah shuddered. I feel like he was waiting for us to leave, like something bad would happen if we didn't. I tried to brush it off. We were both just tired. It was late. We were overthinking things, right? But still, I couldn't shake the feeling. A weird knot had formed in my stomach, but we decided to keep going, just put it behind us and hit the road. The highway seemed even darker now, and Sarah was quieter than usual. Every time I glanced in the rear view, the road was empty, but it felt like we weren't alone. It felt like someone was right behind us, just out of view. Then, without warning, the car sputtered. The engine hiccuped once, twice, and then died. Dead silence, just like that. I turned the key, but it wouldn't start. My heart dropped into my stomach. We were in the middle of nowhere, and it was dead quiet except for the sound of the wind rattling through the car. "What the hell?" Sarah muttered, her voice tight as she tried the ignition again. But nothing. I was starting to panic. We were so far from the nearest town, and the thought of being stuck out here in the middle of nowhere, my chest tightened, and I couldn't stop shaking. Then we both heard it. Barely audible at first, but enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Footsteps, slow, deliberate steps coming from somewhere behind us. Sarah turned her head to look out the back window, but there was nothing there, just darkness. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice strained. I nodded, my heart pounding in my ears. There was definitely someone out there, but where? And then came the worst sound, a scraping, like someone dragging against the side of the car. I froze. My eyes shot to the side mirror, and for just a split second, I saw a figure. Tall, thin, their face hidden in shadow, standing just beyond the car door. I didn't think. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching against the gravel, and floored it down the road, not caring where we were headed. We just had to get out of there. The figure didn't follow us, but it didn't matter. The fear was thick now, like it had settled in my bones. We kept looking back, but the road was empty, and yet the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. We didn't stop until we found the next town, a quiet, sleepy place with a truck stop that had its lights blazing like a lighthouse in the dark. We pulled in, not saying a word, and Sarah was out of the car so fast she locked it before I even got my seatbelt off. I followed her inside. The truck stop wasn't much, a small diner and a few booths. But the noise, the bustle, it was enough to calm my shaking hands. I looked at Sarah, still trying to wrap my head around what just happened. "What the hell was that?" She shook her head, her face pale. "I don't know, but I don't think it was just a coincidence. There's something out there." We didn't sleep much that night. The whole thing kept playing in my head, looping like a bad dream. We didn't talk about it much the next day. It was supposed to be one of those perfect, carefree road trips. You know, the kind everyone talks about doing but never quite gets around to. Just me and Abby driving to nowhere with no real plans. We'd been talking about it for months, especially after we both finished finals. Just a break from everything, with no expectations. No big goals, just freedom. The open road, good music, and endless laughs. How could that possibly go wrong? It started on a Friday afternoon. We were both so ready to escape. Abby's car was packed with snacks, a little too many snacks, but who's counting? A couple of road maps, because we were old school like that, and a mountain of playlists. We didn't have a destination. The goal was simple: anywhere, everywhere, nowhere. We just wanted to be out there, on the move. Our first stop was a tiny, sleepy town, so small it barely existed on the map. We rolled into a gas station just before dusk, and the place felt off. It wasn't run down in a charming way, more like it had been forgotten, tucked into some forgotten corner of the world. Abby hopped out to pump gas, and I stayed in the car, scrolling through my phone and trying to figure out what music I was in the mood for. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound. Then I looked up. There was this old guy standing at the edge of the station, just staring at us. I can't explain it, but there was something about the way he was looking at us that made my skin crawl. He wasn't doing anything suspicious. He was just standing there, staring, and I couldn't look away. The guy looked like he'd been through a lot, dressed in old, faded clothes. His face was weathered, a life lived hard. But it wasn't really his appearance that bothered me. It was his eyes. He didn't blink. He didn't move, just locked onto us. I tried to shake it off. I mean, it's probably nothing, right? Maybe he was just lost in thought. Maybe I was overthinking it. But my heart rate? Definitely picking up. I glanced over at Abby, but she was completely oblivious, focused on the gas pump. "Everything okay?" I called out, trying to sound casual even though I was anything but. "Yeah, all good," Abby shouted back, not even glancing up, but I couldn't look away. Every time I glanced at him, he hadn't moved an inch. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my bones. My instincts were screaming at me to just leave, but I wasn't about to freak Abby out over some weird old man. Then, finally, the guy broke his stare. Slowly, he shuffled toward the side of the building, out of sight. I exhaled, not even realizing I'd been holding my breath. For a second, everything felt okay again. But then, a loud bang echoed from behind the building, like a door slamming, followed by what sounded like footsteps. The noise sent a jolt of panic through me. "Didn't you hear that?" I asked, my voice tight. Abby just gave me a confused look, not even bothered. "It's probably just an animal or something. Relax. You're acting paranoid." I tried to brush it off, but that feeling of unease wouldn't go away. We finished up as fast as we could, and I made Abby promise we wouldn't stop at any more random places like this. I was already second-guessing every decision we'd made that day. We hit the road again, the scenery rolling by, the car eating up the miles. We talked, we laughed, and everything started to feel normal again. The sun dipped below the horizon and night settled in, but for a while I wasn't thinking about the creepy old man or the strange noises. We were just two friends on an adventure, but then, just as we were about to pass through another tiny town, Abby's car started acting up. The headlights flickered, dimmed, and then went out completely. The engine sputtered once, twice, and then just stopped. The silence hit us like a wave. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere. No cell service, no lights, just us and the darkness. I tried the ignition again, desperate, but it was no use. Abby checked her phone. No bars. She said, her voice flat, the panic setting in. "Perfect, just perfect." I muttered, trying to stay calm, but my heart was racing. What the heck was going on? We both stepped out of the car, the night air chilling against our skin. No stars, no sounds, just eerie silence. No distant cars, no crickets, just nothing. The kind of quiet that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. "Let's walk to the next town," Abby said, sounding a bit more unsettled than usual. "We'll find help." So, we locked the car and started walking, the road stretching out in front of us like it had no end. It was strange. Only a few hours ago, we were joking around blasting music, and now we were stranded, and something felt wrong. After a few minutes, I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping behind us. It was faint at first, like footsteps, slow and deliberate. I froze. My heart jumped into my throat. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, gripping Abby's arm. She nodded, her face turning pale. "Yeah, it's probably just an animal, right?" But the footsteps were getting louder, and they weren't stopping. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't anything good. My pace quickened, and Abby did the same, but the tapping was still there, matching our speed. Then it just stopped. Silence again. But this time it was heavier. We both turned to look, and that's when I saw it. A shadow, standing just off the side of the road. Tall, hunched. Its form melted into the darkness. "Abby, run!" I screamed, grabbing her and yanking her into a sprint. We ran as fast as we could, the sound of our footsteps pounding in the night. We didn't look back, not once. We just ran until we found a small, decrepit gas station. It looked like it hadn't seen business in years, but it was a place to stop, to breathe, and hopefully figure out how to get home. I'll never forget that road trip. You know the kind where you've got big plans to drive for hours, eat junk food, blast music, and just let the world pass by? That was the idea, at least. My friends and I had been talking about it for months, getting away, hitting up a few national parks, camping under the stars, and escaping from the usual grind. No real plan, just freedom and the open road. We kicked things off on a Saturday morning. The weather couldn't have been better. Sunny, warm, with just the right kind of breeze. The kind that makes you roll the windows down and let your hair get all messy. There were 4 of us. Me, Sarah, Jake, and Ben. We'd all been friends since college, so we knew each other pretty well. No awkward silences, no bad vibes, just a lot of excitement. At first, everything was perfect. The drive was smooth. We passed through small towns, cracked jokes, and talked about everything under the sun. But after a few hours, something started to feel off. It wasn't anything obvious, just this weird feeling that crept in. Maybe it was the fact that we were on a stretch of road that seemed to go on forever, with nothing around us but fields and trees. Or maybe it was the quiet, the kind of silence that's almost too heavy, like the world was holding its breath. But we brushed it off. Jake, being the spontaneous one, suggested a detour. He found a back road that could cut through and get us to the campsite faster. Ben, though, wasn't a fan of the unknown and immediately voiced his concern. He liked the predictable, the known. But Jake was insistent, and none of us were too worried. After all, it was just a back road. How bad could it be? We turned off the main highway and immediately things felt different. The trees got thicker, the road narrower, and there were no other cars in sight. It felt like we had left civilization behind. The only signs of life were the occasional crow that cawed as we passed. The air even seemed to change, like it was heavier somehow, and the only sound was the crunch of gravel under our tires. And then we saw something, a person, standing by the side of the road just staring at our car as we passed. It's hard to explain why, but it gave me chills. It wasn't just how they looked, it was this overwhelming feeling, like we had just crossed into a place we weren't meant to be. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice a little shakier than I wanted. "Yeah, I saw it," Sarah said, sounding tense. "Was that a person?" We all exchanged uneasy glances. Ben, trying to shake it off, spoke first. "It's nothing. Probably just someone out for a walk or something. Let's just keep going." We tried to dismiss it, but it didn't feel right anymore. The road ahead seemed darker somehow, and the trees felt too close, too watchful. As we drove further, things just kept getting stranger. We passed an old, run-down shack that looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. Then there was a rusty car, half buried in the overgrowth. And way off in the distance, there were these strange flickering lights, like someone had forgotten to turn something off. I don't know about the others, but I could feel the tension building. The kind of tension that wasn't just in my head, it was in the air, thick and suffocating. And then the car stalled. We were completely alone in the middle of nowhere. The sun was dipping low, casting everything in eerie shades of orange and purple. Jake tried the ignition. Nothing. He cursed under his breath, tried again. Still nothing. "We're not going anywhere," Jake muttered. Silence filled the car. It wasn't the comfortable kind. It was the kind that presses down on you, makes you feel like you're running out of time. "What's going on?" Ben asked, his voice shaky. "Why are we stuck here?" "I don't know," Jake said, rubbing his hands through his hair. "It's like the engine just died." We all got out to stretch our legs, but none of us wanted to stray far from the car. There was just something wrong about this place. That's when we heard it, this low, guttural sound coming from the trees. It wasn't quite a growl, but close enough to make my stomach turn. It sounded like the woods themselves were alive, breathing, watching us. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice wide-eyed. "Yeah," I said, my heart pounding. "I heard it." We all turned toward the sound, but there was nothing. Just the trees, dark and still. Jake, trying to stay calm, pulled out his phone to check for service. No bars, completely cut off. The air grew colder, and out of the corner of my eye I saw something move. A figure, much closer this time, moving between the trees. "Get in the car, now," I said, my voice trembling. No one argued. We all scrambled back into the car. Jake turned the key again, praying it would start. It didn't. "Shit!" he yelled, slamming his hands against the steering wheel. Then we heard it again, louder this time. That same low, eerie sound. It was like something or someone was circling us, watching us from the shadows. There was no way out. We were trapped. And then, just like that, the car's engine roared to life. Jake didn't waste a second. He slammed his foot on the gas and we tore down the road, not daring to look back. We didn't talk about it once we got back on the highway. It all started as one of those spontaneous ideas, one of those "hey, let's just go for it" moments. My friends and I had been talking about it for weeks, but when the day actually arrived, it felt like something out of a dream. We stuffed my car with snacks, drinks, and enough playlists to keep us entertained for days. The plan was simple: a weekend road trip to clear our heads, get away from the usual chaos, and just have fun. But as it turns out, we didn't exactly get what we bargained for. We were cruising along some back roads, trying to stay away from the usual tourist spots. The highway stretched out before us, empty and quiet, the kind of road where it feels like you're the last person on Earth. The sun was low in the sky, casting this soft golden glow over everything. It was perfect, almost too perfect. And that's when the first strange thing happened. We passed this old gas station, one of those places with a faded sign that looked like it had been standing there forever. No other cars around, but there was this figure standing next to the pump. He was just staring at us as we drove by. I remember feeling a little off, but we didn't stop. We just kept chatting, laughing, and letting the road take us. About an hour later, the sun had dipped completely, and the road got even more desolate. The air was thick with that weird silence that makes you feel like you're the only one left in the world. You know that feeling, right? Like something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it. It wasn't until we hit a sharp curve that I realized we'd made a huge mistake. Out of nowhere, my headlights started flickering. At first, I thought it was just me, but then the engine sputtered and nothing. Silence. I pulled over to the side, heart sinking. The battery had died, but we just refueled not long ago. How could that happen? "I'll take a look," Mark said, trying to sound casual, but we both knew the vibe had shifted. He popped the hood and I was left sitting there in the dark, feeling completely stranded. I cracked the windows, my eyes scanning the nothingness outside. It felt like the darkness was closing in on us. The only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves and the wind whispering through the trees. And then I saw it. In the rearview mirror, 2 headlights appeared. Slowly, they grew bigger. At first, I thought it was another car, someone who could help. But as it got closer, something about it didn't feel right. The car was swerving, moving too fast, too close to the edge of the road. Then I saw the driver's face. Pale, eyes dark, almost hollow. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The car zoomed past us. But instead of continuing down the road, it slowed to a stop. It just sat there, idling, like it was waiting for us. Mark was still messing with the engine, and the others were distracted, talking among themselves. But I couldn't take my eyes off that car. Something was definitely wrong. "Mark," I called, my voice a little shaky. "We need to go, now." Mark looked up, confused at first, but when he saw the car, his face went white. Before we could even think about what to do, the car suddenly reversed and stopped right behind us. The headlights blinded us, and a cold rush of panic shot through me. We were trapped, and then the man stepped out. He moved slowly, almost deliberately, his long coat dragging behind him like something straight out of a horror movie. My heart was hammering in my chest as he got closer, his presence heavy, suffocating. Mark stood up, trying to act tough, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Can I help you?" Mark called out, but his voice wavered. The man didn't answer right away. He just stared at us, his eyes empty, like there was nothing human in them anymore. He was close now, just a few feet away. Every instinct in me screamed to run. Then he smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was slow, unsettling. My blood ran cold. "Your car's broken, isn't it?" he said, his voice low, raspy. I can help. Something in the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. It was like he was enjoying this. And that's when it hit me. There were no other cars around, no one else, just us and this strange, creepy guy. "We don't need help," I said, forcing the words out, my hand shaking as I reached for the door handle. "We'll figure it out." The man didn't move, just stood there, his eyes still locked on me. I felt like he could see straight through me. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he turned around and walked back to his car, not saying another word. I didn't take my eyes off him until he got in and drove away, without a single glance back. We stood there in silence, the air thick with tension. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't over. Mark went back to the car, hands still shaking as he tried to start it again. But nothing. Not a sound. "Maybe we should walk," Mark said quietly. It was clear that we couldn't stay there any longer, so we started walking. The road stretched out before us, long and empty, the darkness closing in with every step. We were hoping for a signal, or maybe someone who could help, but then, out of nowhere, we heard it. The sound of tires coming from behind us. I turned and there it was, the same car creeping up slowly, headlights blinding us. This time the man didn't stop, he just drove by, slow enough for us to see him again, his empty eyes fixed straight ahead, unblinking. I don't know how I kept walking, but I couldn't stop, not now. After what felt like forever, we finally found a small gas station. It wasn't much, and the lights flickered, but at least it was open. We rushed inside, desperate for help. The cashier looked at us like we were crazy, but he didn't argue. He called a tow truck, and we waited, looking out the windows, half expecting the car to come back. It didn't, but as we drove away that night, heading back with the tow truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't seen the last of that man or his car. And I've never taken a road trip quite the same way since.